Poor girl gives sandwich to disguised millionaire. 3 days later, a man knocks on her door. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The old clock on the wall chimed once, beginning its quiet sequence of 12. Inside the ground floor apartment of 1117 Westwood Avenue, a building where the hallways always smelled of old paint and the floorboards creaked under every step, a man sat motionless in front of his laptop. His face was expressionless, like the clock itself, classic, refined, and unreadable. On the screen was a bank statement. He moved the cursor to the transfer recipient field and typed in, Rachel Morgan. Beneath that, a short memo, for services unrendered, yet deserved. The amount? 7 digits. His hand paused for a moment before clicking send. Then he did it, without blinking. At that same moment, in a ground floor apartment on the east side of Detroit, 7-year-old Lily Morgan sat cross-legged on the worn wooden floor, holding a crayon and carefully coloring in a rainbow. The walls around her were chipped and water-stained in places, but all of it was covered by her drawings. Sunflowers, kittens, hearts, and tiny houses with curly chimneys. I'm adding a son, okay, Mom? Lily said without turning around. Okay, but finish your dinner first, Rachel Morgan replied, her voice hoarse from exhaustion, but still gentle. She had just taken off her medical gloves and was stirring a pot of tomato soup on their small stove. The nurse's scrubs she wore still bore dried bloodstains. Rachel had just finished her afternoon shift at St. Anthony's Clinic and was getting ready for the night shift at Memorial Hospital. 2 jobs, 2 worlds. One reason, Lily, do you work anywhere else besides the hospital? Lily asked, looking up. Rachel paused, then chuckled. Nope, I just fix people, and make tomato soup, and hang my drawings. And hang your drawings? Of course. Their apartment wasn't big, 2 tiny bedrooms and a living room that opened into the kitchen, but it was always clean, always warm. Rachel didn't have much, but she had one rule. No matter how tired she was, home must always feel like a kind place for Lily to come back to. Tomorrow's Monday, Rachel said, spooning the last bite of soup into her daughter's bowl. Want peanut butter sandwiches again? Lily nodded. Cut diagonal, into triangles. As always. That night, after Lily had fallen asleep in a worn blanket with frayed corners, Rachel sat in silence at the kitchen table. On the table lay pay stubs from both hospitals, barely enough to cover rent, utilities, and a few groceries. She opened her old laptop and logged into her bank account. Then she froze. Her balance, previously just over $30, now read $500,000. Rachel shot to her feet. She checked 3 times. It wasn't a glitch. It wasn't a loan. It wasn't a tax refund. No explanation. Only a note. For services unrendered, yet deserved. A prank? She whispered, her hands trembling. At that very moment, on the 52nd floor of sleek glass skyscraper in Detroit's financial district, Graham Bennett poured himself a glass of red wine. He stood silently, gazing at the city skyline, golden lights flickering through the hazy night. A young assistant stepped in. Mr. Bennett, the transfer has gone through. He nodded. Good. She may be suspicious. She might contact the media. Graham set his glass down, eyes still on the city below. No one notices a single mother nurse on the east side of Detroit, he said quietly. But I do. The next morning, as Rachel tried to make sense of the bank statement, Lily walked to school with her old backpack hanging loosely off one shoulder. Inside were a juice box, an apple, and a triangle-cut peanut butter sandwich wrapped in foil. Passing a pothole-ridden street corner, Lily spotted a homeless man curled on a bench, shivering in the cold. She hesitated, then pulled the sandwich from her bag. I have food. Do you need it, mister? She asked softly. The man looked up, eyes gray like a winter sky, filled with surprise. You don't need to save it for yourself? He rasped. I get lunch at school. They have spaghetti today. He looked at the sandwich, then back at her. What's your name? Lily Morgan. He smiled gently. That's a beautiful name. At the same time, inside his office, Graham Bennett received a message from his assistant. Confirmed. Child's name, Lily. Mother, Rachel. Single. Low income. Send full report. He didn't answer right away. On his desk sat a napkin stained with peanut butter, and in his ears her small voice echoed. I get lunch at school. They have spaghetti today. A sandwich and a nod. The morning sky was draped in a thin, sleepy fog, hazy and reluctant, as if Detroit itself hadn't quite woken up yet. October brought with it a soft clash of golden leaves and shy cold. Nothing bitter enough to sting, but just enough to turn children's breath into tiny clouds. Lily. Morgan wore a faded purple coat, her backpack hanging off one shoulder. Inside were notebooks, a small carton of milk, an apple, and, wrapped carefully in foil, a triangle-cut peanut butter sandwich. Her mother had made it earlier that morning, before collapsing into bed after a long night shift. In Lily's hand was a half-finished drawing. She walked while coloring with a stubby crayon, sketching a playground filled with imaginary friends and a dog that had never actually existed. The street shimmered with morning gray. Shopkeepers were just beginning to lift their shutters. A group of unhoused people huddled around a vent, seeking warmth. Lily no longer flinched at the sight. Her mother had taught her that pain doesn't make people bad. It just makes them tired. As she neared the bus stop at Jefferson and Marlowe, Lily slowed. Sitting on a splintered bench was a gaunt man with tangled hair and a long beard. His head hung low, hands buried in the pockets of a threadbare coat. No one sat near him. Passers-by either looked away or didn't look at all. Lily hesitated, her breath puffed, white in the cold. She glanced at her milk, then at her sandwich, thought for a second, then walked over. "Hi, mister." The small voice cut through the background hum of the street like something strange and beautiful. The man slowly lifted his head. His pale gray eyes were shadowed by exhaustion. But there was a flicker of something else, surprise, caution, maybe even hope. "You talking to me?" he rasped, his voice dry like sandpaper. Lily nodded. "My name's Lily. We're having spaghetti at school today, so I can share my breakfast." She unzipped her backpack and carefully pulled out the foil-wrapped sandwich. Her small hands trembled in the cold. "My mom made it. No jelly. She's allergic." The man stared at the sandwich, then at Lily, for longer than necessary. There was no hunger in his expression, only disbelief, sadness, and something close to gratitude. "You should keep it," he said. "It's cold out. I'll be okay. Mom says to share when you can. And you look sad." That made him laugh, a short, broken sound that barely made it out of his throat. "You know," he said, "I used to have a daughter about your age." Lily didn't know what to say, so she just sat down, at a distance, on the edge of the bench. "Then you probably know kids don't lie when they share food." Graham Bennett, CEO of Bennett Holdings, once featured on the cover of Forbes, the man behind a $1.2 billion medical AI deal with the Italian government, was now sitting beside a 7-year-old girl, receiving his first sandwich in 3 weeks. No one recognized him. No bodyguards. No tailored suits. Just another ragged soul in the social experiment he himself had initiated to see how people treat each other when money is stripped away. And in 3 weeks, he'd received avoidant eyes, coins tossed without a glance, whispers like he was human debris. But this little girl had looked at him as a person. "What's your name?" Lily asked, swinging her legs above the pavement. Graham smiled, soft as wind through dry leaves. "I think you'll find out soon enough." When Lily was out of sight, Graham didn't eat right away. He unfolded the foil slowly, like unwrapping a birthday gift. The sandwich was small, the bread a little dry, the peanut butter unevenly spread. But to him, it was the most precious thing he had ever held. He took a bite, salty, nutty, and began to cry. Up on the 52nd floor of Bennett Tower, in a softly lit surveillance room, Graham's assistant Ella Carter picked up an internal call. "Open a file. Name, Lily Morgan. Location, Jefferson and Marlowe. Father, none. Mother, Rachel Morgan. Occupation, nurse. Social risk status, high. Full report on my desk by 6 p.m. That afternoon, when Lily got home, Rachel had managed to leave work early. Exhausted, but still upright, she was frying egg sandwiches for dinner. She smiled as Lily talked excitedly about a man with sad eyes and a smell like an old closet. Rachel's heart clenched mid-beat. "You gave food to a stranger?" she asked gently but firmly. I sat a little away, Mom. But you said, when someone's sad, do something small if you can. Rachel was quiet. She couldn't argue with the very rule she had tried to teach. You're right, she said at last. But promise me, always keep a safe distance. And only if you feel okay. I promise. That night, Rachel logged into her bank account again. The mysterious transfer was still there. The bank confirmed. No glitch. No fraud. No error. She stared at the screen, then opened a browser window and typed, Graham Bennett, Detroit. Her eyes widened. The gray eyes in the photograph were the same. Who had Lily met this morning? Behind a sandwich. The sun had only just begun to slip through the thick glass on the 52nd floor of Bennett Tower, a steel and glass skyscraper where power was measured in keystrokes. But the corner office overlooking the Detroit River wasn't lit by the usual click of keyboards or back-to-back meetings. It held only Graham Bennett, sitting alone, shirt unbuttoned at the collar, hair still tousled with city dust, in a small square of foil, neatly folded and tucked into his shirt pocket, a gift he hadn't been able to throw away. He hadn't slept all night. Instead, he watched the city lights like a man searching for something he once had, or had long since lost. A modest breakfast from a little girl named Lily. A simple sandwich that made him feel seen. Not as a CEO, not as a billionaire, but as a tired, lonely human being who mattered to someone. It was achingly simple. You called me at 4:30 in the morning. I assumed it was an emergency, said Ella Carter, his personal assistant and in-house counsel, as she stepped into the office, heels still damp from the rain. Graham didn't speak at first. Instead, he turned his laptop toward her. On the screen, a paused traffic cam frame at the corner of Jefferson and Marlowe. A little girl was captured mid-motion, reaching out with a foil-wrapped sandwich. That's the girl I told you about. Ella stared at the image. What exactly do you want? Graham looked back at her, eyes pale gray and strangely alive, with emotion and resolve. You ran the usual background check on her and her mother. But I don't want data. I want to understand who they are. Ella narrowed her eyes. You're emotional. That's not like you. No, he replied quietly. I haven't been myself for a long time. The file on Rachel Morgan arrived before 9 a.m. Ella presented the findings in her usual composed, clinical tone. Name, Rachel Morgan, 34. Occupation, licensed nurse. Works 2 jobs, Detroit Mercy Hospital and Lakeside Haven Nursing Center. Marital status, single. Father of child, left before the girl turned 1. Residence, Jefferson Court Apartments, ground floor, Unit 1B. Credit history, still repaying student loans. Recent approval for an unsecured line of credit, likely for emergencies. Social media, inactive for over 2 years. Ella closed the folder. She's the type who carries everything alone, doesn't ask for help, doesn't complain. Graham was silent for a long moment. Finally, he said slowly, I want to help, but I won't let them feel like a charity case. Ella raised an eyebrow. What do you plan to help then? No cash, no surprise gifts, no buying a house, no changing schools, unless they want that. Then what? Graham turned to look out at the river. I want to build something they can choose, not something they owe. That afternoon, Rachel had just gotten home, exhausted from her shift, when the landline rang. She usually ignored unknown numbers, but something about this one made her pick up. Hello, my name is Ella Carter. I'm calling on behalf of someone who met your daughter this morning. Rachel's grip on the phone tightened. Met Lily. Where? At the bus stop. Nothing bad happened. Quite the opposite. Your daughter did something beautiful. I just wanted to ask if there's any way we might thank her. Rachel stiffened. Who are you? I'm a lawyer. I work for the Bennett Foundation. The man your daughter helped was Graham Bennett. You may not know the name, but... No, I know it. Rachel interrupted, breath catching. Wait, you're telling me Lily gave food to him? Yes, a small sandwich. Apparently, it was her only breakfast that day. Rachel was speechless. Part of her wanted to scream, why was he there? But the mother in her just wanted to shield Lily from any fallout that might come from being too kind. We don't need anything, Rachel said softly, but firmly. I've taught my daughter that kindness isn't meant to be repaid. Understand. But if you ever change your mind, mister, Bennett would like to meet in person. Not to give anything, just to say thank you. Back on the 52nd floor, Graham ended the call after Ella relayed the conversation. He nodded slowly. She's stronger than I imagined. What now? Ella asked. Graham stood. I'll wait until they're ready. And in the meantime, I'll prepare a thank you that feels real. That evening, Lily was curled under a blanket, eyes half shut. Rachel sat beside her, gently stroking her hair. Did you meet anyone special today? She asked. Lily thought for a moment. Yeah. He looked sad but smiled anyway. I think he was hungry. I don't know his name. Rachel smiled faintly. His name is Graham. And what you did, he's going to remember that for a long time. It was just the sandwich you made, Lily mumbled. Rachel looked into her daughter's clear, wide eyes. But you gave it away when you had so little. That, my love, not everyone can do. Across town, Graham stood in the kitchen he rarely used. He was making a peanut butter sandwich. Not to eat, but to remind himself. Sometimes, the greatest gesture isn't in the value of what you give, but in why you gave it. The stranger in a gray suit. Thursday. Rain fell gently over Detroit, tapping rhythmically on the rusted awning of Jefferson Court Apartments. Inside a ground-floor unit, Rachel Morgan was rinsing the last of the dinner dishes, mac and cheese with 2 thin slices of apple. Lily was on the living room floor, coloring intently. She was finishing a drawing for her teacher, each crayon stroke deliberate, as though those colored pencils were the most precious things she owned. And for Lily, they truly were. A knock at the door. Not loud, but firm. Rachel looked up, frowning. She wasn't expecting anyone. Neighbors rarely dropped by, and if they did, they usually called first. She dried her hands and walked slowly to the door. Peeking through the peephole, she saw a tall woman with light brown skin, hair neatly pinned back, wearing a slate gray suit and polished heels. Not a neighbor, not a delivery person. Her instincts told her this wasn't a casual visit. Yes, Rachel said through the door, keeping the secondary lock in place. The woman smiled politely, her tone calm and professional. Good evening, Ms. Morgan. My name is Ella Carter. I'm not here to sell anything, nor am I from collections. I represent Mr. Graham Bennett. He asked me to personally deliver his thanks to you and your daughter. Rachel froze. That name, Bennett, rang like a strange but familiar bell. Then it clicked. The man Lily had met. The man with the sad eyes her daughter had mentioned several nights in a row. What do you know my daughter's name? Rachel asked, voice tense, eyes guarded behind the door. Ella didn't flinch. She simply pulled out a business card and held it through the gap. Ella Carter, Legal Affairs, Bennett Foundation. 52F, Bennett Tower, downtown Detroit. We haven't been tracking your family, Ella said gently. But Mr. Bennett was deeply moved by your daughter in a way he didn't expect. Rachel still didn't unlock the door. I need more than that. Ella nodded. As you probably suspect, Mr. Bennett did look into your background, but not to violate your privacy. He only wanted to understand. Who raised a little girl kind enough to share her only meal with a total stranger, without hesitation. Silence thickened between them. In the other room, Lily kept coloring, unaware of the quiet tension by the door. Who is he really? Rachel asked, releasing the latch but still keeping the door barely cracked. Graham Bennett, Ella replied. Founder of Bennett Technologies. One of the 10 most influential people in biomedical research in the country. Net worth estimated near $8.7 billion. Rachel opened the door all the way. You just said, billionaire. Ella nodded. And for the last 3 weeks, he's been living as a homeless man, conducting a personal study on social behavior and access to street-level healthcare support. And my daughter was the first person to look at him like a human being, not a burden, not garbage. Rachel stepped aside and motioned her in. The apartment was small and worn, but spotless and full of warmth. Ella noticed the walls were covered in hand-drawn pictures, sunflowers, animals, rainbow-colored homes, all Lily's work. Where is she? Still coloring, Rachel said, pointing toward the living room where Lily sat, tongue slightly out, focused on shading a rainbow with a stubby wax crayon. Ella watched for a moment. Mr. Bennett doesn't want to disrupt your lives, but he would like to express his gratitude and, if possible, offer help in a meaningful way. Rachel stayed silent. Her instincts as a mother made her cautious of grand gestures, especially from powerful people. Ella seemed to sense that. I understand. We're not here to buy your gratitude. We're trying to return a little of the kindness that was given freely. Lily peeked around the corner, noticing the stranger. Mom, who is it? Come say hello to MS. Carter, sweetie. Lily said politely, her eyes curious as they scanned Ella's sleek leather bag. Ella knelt to Lily's level. Do you remember the man you gave your sandwich to? The sad man. His eyes were bright, Lily replied, remembering vividly. He still remembers you, and he asked me to say thank you. It was just a sandwich, Lily whispered. Sometimes a sandwich is bigger than a banquet, Ella said, eyes glinting with warmth. After nearly an hour of conversation, Rachel was still guarded. She was grateful, but not yet ready to trust fully. Thank you for coming, she said, walking Ella to the door. But if he truly wants to help, he needs to understand. Around here, people don't trust beautiful things so easily. Ella turned back, her gaze kind but steady. He understands that, and he's willing to wait. That night, Rachel stood at the kitchen window long after dark, watching streetlights reflect off wet pavement. It felt like a strange wind had passed through their quiet little life. Lily was asleep, curled around a rainbow print pillow. On the kitchen table sat the ivory-colored business card from Ella, lying beside a glass jar filled with coins, Rachel's emergency savings. 2 worlds. 1 message. She picked up the card and turned it over. On the back, handwritten in blue ink. Kindness is the language which the deaf can hear and the blind can see. Mark Twain. Rachel traced her finger along the line. Part of her, tired and worn, wanted to ignore it, but another part, small but stirring, began to wonder. What if this wasn't a trap? What if this was something good, finally knocking on their door? The truth behind a piece of bread. 2 days after the unexpected visit from Ella Carter, Rachel Morgan still hadn't found peace. She went to work as usual, walking hospital corridors with a tired smile and a cheap cup of coffee in hand. But her mind kept drifting back to that night. Ella's words didn't leave a scratch. They carved into her. Saturday afternoon, while Lily lay on the carpet with a purple crayon in hand, determined to finish a flying unicorn with hair like Mommy's, the phone rang. Rachel picked it up. Ella's voice came through, calm and careful, like someone stepping into a quiet room. Mr. Bennett would like to meet you and Lily. Not at his office. He's hoping for a more personal setting. Rachel hesitated. Personal setting, meaning what? We reserved a booth at a small diner in Midtown. Pancake Corner, very kid-friendly. No cameras. No press. Rachel glanced over at Lily, who was busy drawing wings. She turned back to the phone, her voice lowering. He's not planning to use my daughter for some PR campaign, is he? No, MS. Morgan, Ella answered, her sincerity clear even over the line. No one needs to know about this, except the 3 of you. Sunday morning, Detroit was dry after days of rain. The air smelled of damp soil and distant car horns. Rachel held Lily's hand as they stepped out of the taxi, arranged and paid for by the Bennett Foundation. She wore her worn black coat, while Lily wore her sky blue knit dress, the one reserved for very special days. Pancake Corner sat tucked at a street corner, its windows fogged with warmth and the smell of syrup and butter spilling onto the sidewalk. A man stood outside, tall, silver-haired, dressed in a soft charcoal sweater instead of a suit. He looked more like a retired teacher than a billionaire. Good morning, MS. Morgan. Good morning, Lily, he said. His voice was low, steady, yet carried quiet weight. Rachel tightened her grip on Lily's hand. You're Graham Bennett? He nodded, his gray eyes calm like a winter lake. They took a corner booth near the window, where sunlight spilled gently across the table. A waitress handed the menus, and Lily immediately pointed to the bear-shaped pancakes. Rachel ordered coffee. She hadn't touched it yet. Her eyes never left the man sitting across from her. Before you say anything, she began, I need to know, why would someone like you with money, power, seek out a child like Lily? Graham didn't deflect. He reached into his coat and pulled out a photograph, of a peanut butter sandwich wrapped in a napkin, slightly squashed with a small bite taken out of the corner. This picture was pulled from a city traffic camera after I told my team what happened. Not for surveillance. To capture something I couldn't stop thinking about. Rachel stared at the image, then looked at Lily. You really gave away your lunch? Yes, Mama, Lily said softly. He looked cold, and it was your peanut butter sandwich. I thought he needed it more. Graham smiled, eyes glistening. I spent 3 weeks out there, felt the cold, the rejection, the sidelong stares. And in all that time, only one person truly saw me. Not as trash, but as human. He paused, voice cracking. And that was your daughter. Rachel felt something split open in her chest. Not from sentimentality, but from the realization that the values she'd instilled in her child, even through exhaustion and hardship, had taken root. And someone had noticed. Breakfast passed quietly. Graham shared childhood stories. Growing up in Michigan, the single mother who waited tables to send him to school. Rachel listened, not fully convinced, but less guarded. After Lily asked to go wash her hands, Graham leaned in. MS. Morgan, I want to do something, not out of guilt, not to repay a debt, but because I saw something precious in your daughter, and I want to help protect it. Rachel stayed silent. She knew what was coming, a proposal, and that terrified her more than it thrilled her. First, Graham said, placing a cream-colored envelope on the table, I've set up a lifetime scholarship fund for Lily, any school, any field she chooses. It's legally signed and fully funded. Rachel didn't reach for the envelope. And I'd like to invite you to join my medical charity, Bennett Care Initiative, as a regional health coordinator. Triple your current pay, set hours, no overnight shifts, full benefits. She looked up, stunned. You're offering to change our entire lives over a sandwich. Graham shook his head slowly. No, MS. Morgan, I'm doing this because you raised a child who believes kindness doesn't need applause. And I want to preserve that before the world tries to crush it. Rachel left the diner without saying yes. She didn't say no, either. As Graham held the taxi door open, she simply said, I need time. He nodded. I've spent a long time learning what truly matters. I don't mind waiting. On the way home, Lily rested her head on Rachel's shoulder and whispered, I like the sad man, but he smiles more now. Rachel stroked her daughter's hair. Sometimes, sweetheart, a smile is how healing begins. Promises and shadows of the past. That night, after Lily had drifted into sleep beneath her cartoon-covered blanket, Rachel sat before her computer, hands trembling slightly around a cup of cold tea. Graham Bennett's offer echoed in her mind, well-intentioned, yet so flawless that someone who had endured hardship like her couldn't help but be wary. She opened her browser and typed, Graham Bennett plus family plus tragedy. The internet, with its unfailing memory, presented numerous headlines. But Rachel's eyes settled on one name nestled among the financial news. Wife of billionaire Graham Bennett dies by suicide after daughter's death. Rachel swallowed hard and clicked on the article. The words unfolded like tiny blades, slicing through the defenses she had painstakingly built. Emily Bennett, the 6-year-old daughter of Bennett Holdings founder, passed away following a prolonged misdiagnosis. Her mother, Caroline Bennett, left a suicide note criticizing her husband for being too engrossed in work to notice their daughter's warning signs. 6 months after Emily's death, Caroline was found in a hotel room with a brief note. If you had listened, maybe she would still be here. Rachel covered her mouth with her hand. Lily had just turned 7. She recalled Graham's gaze when he spoke to her daughter. It wasn't mere concern. It was something deeper, more intense, like someone looking at a dream they could never reclaim. The next morning, Rachel called in to request the evening off, the first time in 8 months. Lily sat eating a simple breakfast of toast and a small apple, blissfully unaware of the turmoil brewing in her mother's mind. Sweetheart, I have something to ask you. Yes. Lily looked up, crumbs still on her face. Did Mr. Graham say anything unusual when you had breakfast with him? No, Mom, Lily replied with a slight shrug. He told stories about a lake where he used to fish as a kid and said you were brave for being a nurse. Rachel forced a smile. Brave, or a desperate single mother clinging to every penny. She wiped her daughter's mouth and kissed her forehead. Remember, if anyone ever makes you uncomfortable, even an adult, you must tell me, okay? I know, Lily said, tilting her head. Mr. Graham isn't strange, Mom. He's sad but kind. That afternoon, Rachel arranged to meet Ella Carter at a small cafe. She needed answers, and they had to come from someone who had stood by Graham through his trials. Ella arrived punctually, maintaining her professional demeanor, but this time with a touch of gentleness, as if anticipating Rachel's questions. You've read it, haven't you? Ella asked directly. Rachel nodded. I need the truth. Not from the media. Ella sat down, cradling her cappuccino. Emily's death is a wound Graham has never healed, she said softly. I remember the night he returned from Tokyo. The meeting was supposed to last 3 days, but he stayed for 8. During that time, his wife called repeatedly. Emily had a high fever, was unsteady, and occasionally stuttered. But he didn't answer. Rachel was silent, a mix of sorrow and anger swirling within her. After the funeral, he disappeared for 3 months. No contact, no work. When he came back, he started doing charity work. But he never mentioned Emily's name. Until he met Lily, Ella nodded. Your daughter has something that made him reflect. For the first time, I saw him stop avoiding his memories. Do you think he's trying to replace Emily with my daughter? Rachel asked, her voice tense. Ella immediately shook her head. No, I believe he's trying to do the right thing, belatedly but sincerely. That night, Rachel stood by her daughter's bed for a long time. Lily slept soundly, hugging her worn-out teddy bear. Part of her wanted to reject everything, the opportunities, the promises, the involvement of a grieving man. But another part wanted to believe that not all wealthy people are selfish, believe that tragedy can lead to a journey of healing, believe that someone might genuinely want to help, not out of guilt, but because they recognize the true value of kindness. She gently adjusted Lily's blanket, then went to the kitchen, opened the cupboard, and retrieved the envelope Graham had given her earlier. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside were 2 documents. One was a scholarship contract with Lily Morgan printed in bold. The other was a job description for a position at the Bennett Care Initiative, with a 6-figure salary and standard working hours. At the bottom of the page, there was a handwritten note. Not to buy trust, but to start something kind, Graham. Rachel closed her eyes, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to hope, not just for a less arduous future, but because perhaps kindness still has a place in this skeptical world. Promises and the shadows of the past. That night, after Lily had drifted into a peaceful sleep beneath her cartoon-covered blanket, Rachel sat before her computer screen, hands trembling slightly around a cup of cold tea. Graham Bennett's offer echoed in her mind, well-intentioned, yet so perfect it stirred the wariness ingrained in someone who had faced hardship. She opened her browser and typed, Graham Bennett plus family plus tragedy. The internet, with its unerring memory, presented a slew of headlines. But Rachel's eyes settled on one nestled among financial news. Wife of billionaire Graham Bennett dies by suicide following daughter's death. Swallowing hard, she clicked on the article. The words cut through her defenses like a series of small, sharp blades. The daughter of Bennett Holdings founder, 6-year-old Emily Bennett, passed away after a prolonged misdiagnosis. Her mother, Caroline Bennett, left a suicide note criticizing her husband for being too absorbed in work to notice their child's warning signs. 6 months after Emily's death, Caroline was found in a hotel room with a brief note. If you had listened, maybe she would still be here. Rachel covered her mouth with her hand. Lily had just turned 7. She recalled Graham's eyes when he spoke to her daughter. There was more than mere concern. Something deeper, as if he were gazing upon a dream that could never return. The next morning, Rachel called in to request the night off, a first in 8 months. Lily sat enjoying a simple breakfast of toast and a small apple, blissfully unaware of the turmoil brewing in her mother's mind. Sweetheart, I need to ask you something. Yes, Mom. Lily looked up, crumbs clinging to her lips. Did Mr. Graham say anything unusual when we had breakfast with him? No, Mom. Lily replied with a slight shrug. He told stories about a lake where he used to fish as a kid and said you're brave for being a nurse. Rachel forced a smile. Brave, or a desperate single mother clinging to every penny. She wiped her daughter's mouth and kissed her forehead gently. Remember, if anyone ever makes you uncomfortable, even an adult, you must tell me, okay? I know, Mom, Lily said, tilting her head. Mister. Graham isn't weird, though. He's sad but nice. That afternoon, Rachel arranged to meet Ella Carter at a small cafe. She needed answers, and they had to come from someone who had stood by Graham through his trials. Ella arrived punctually, maintaining her professional demeanor, but with a softness suggesting she anticipated Rachel's questions. You've read it, haven't you? Ella asked directly. Rachel nodded. I need the truth, not from the media. Ella sat down, cradling her cappuccino. Emily's death is a wound Graham has never healed, she said softly. I remember the night he returned from Tokyo. The meeting was supposed to last 3 days, but he stayed for 8. During that time, his wife called repeatedly. Emily had a high fever, was unsteady, and occasionally slurred her speech. But he didn't answer. Rachel sat in stunned silence, a mix of sympathy and anger swirling within her. After the funeral, he vanished for 3 months. No contact, no work. When he returned, he began his philanthropic efforts. But he never mentioned Emily's name. Until he met Lily. Ella nodded. Your daughter has something. That made him reflect. For the first time, I saw him confront his memories. Do you think he's trying to replace Emily with my daughter? Rachel's voice hardened. Ella shook her head immediately. No, I believe he's trying to do what's right, belatedly, but sincerely. That evening, Rachel stood for a long time beside her daughter's bed. Lily slept soundly, clutching a well-worn teddy bear. Part of her wanted to reject everything, the opportunities, the promises, the involvement of a grieving man. But another part wanted to believe that not all wealthy individuals are selfish, believe that tragedy can lead to a journey of healing, believe that someone might genuinely want to help, not out of guilt, but because they recognize the true value of kindness. She gently adjusted Lily's blanket, then went to the kitchen, opened the cupboard, and retrieved the envelope Graham had given her the day before. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside were 2 documents. One was a scholarship agreement with Lily Morgan boldly printed, the other a job description for the Bennett Care Initiative, with a 6-figure salary and standard working hours. At the bottom of the page, a handwritten note. Read, not to buy trust, but to start something kind, Graham. Rachel closed her eyes, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to hope, not just for a less arduous future, but because perhaps kindness still has a place in this skeptical world. 3 days after the meeting at the Memorial Garden, Rachel Morgan entered the discreet conference room of the Bennett Tower, carrying a list of terms twice as long as any contract Ella Carter had ever handled. But this time, there were no papers or pens, just a conversation between a single mother who had once lost faith in unconditional kindness and a man who had lost everything. The room was simple, with dark wooden floors and large windows overlooking a city transitioning into early winter. Graham was already seated, a steaming cup of Earl Grey tea by his left hand, without any assistants or interpreters. Rachel stepped in, carrying her worn handbag, her gaze steady and posture that of someone who knew exactly what she wanted. Thank you for coming, Graham spoke first. Rachel sat across from him. I'm not here to say thank you. I'm here to discuss conditions. He nodded, and I will listen. Schooling. Rachel placed a brown envelope on the table. Inside were documents from Horizon Academy, a well-known private school in Detroit, not for its high tuition, but for its educational philosophy emphasizing humanity and community service. Lily will attend here, she stated clearly. The school offers partial scholarships based on moral character. I don't want her to be just another student funded by Mr. Bennett. She needs a place that recognizes her intrinsic value. Graham picked up the documents, his eyes lighting up slightly. Horizon, he repeated. I funded their library 12 years ago. Rachel didn't smile. I know, but this time no names. All support will come through a community scholarship foundation. No plaques, no speeches. Graham folded the documents. Agreed. Employment. Rachel opened her briefcase and took out her resume, something she hadn't updated in a long time due to lack of time. I know your medical organization has many branches and opportunities, but I won't accept a coordinator position immediately. I want to start as a regular day shift nurse, like any other colleague. Graham raised an eyebrow. Rachel, with your experience, you could run an entire center. And I will, if I'm capable, not because I'm Lily Morgan's mother. He was silent for a moment, then gently nodded. I respect that, but I will ensure your salary and benefits match the equivalent position, not less. Rachel smiled slightly, for the first time since entering. You always find a way to make things fair in your own way. Housing or not. We won't be moving out of our old apartment, she continued. At least not for a year. Graham looked surprised. I could help you purchase a better home or rent a safer apartment. I know, but Lily needs time to adjust. Our apartment is small, old, but it's the world she knows. She needs a sense of security when everything else around her is changing. Graham thought for a few seconds, then nodded. May I fund some essential repairs? Like the heating system and electrical outlets? I'll accept, as long as no one knows. Personal boundaries. Rachel placed both hands on the table, fingers interlaced, a gesture preparing for the most important point. Graham, she addressed him by name for the first time, without Mr. or Sir. I'm very grateful for what you've done, but you're not Lily's father, and I don't want anyone, even a kind person, to inadvertently step into that role. Graham nodded slowly. I'm not seeking a replacement family. Good, because she needs a grown-up friend, not a new father. A long silence followed. Then Graham spoke, his voice full of empathy. I once thought that if someone like Lily had been in my life earlier, I might have lived differently. But now I just want to ensure she has the best living conditions to choose her own path. The door opened gently. Ella entered, carrying 2 draft agreements. We've prepared what you mentioned. Everything can be adjusted if needed. Rachel took a copy. Flipping through the pages, she didn't read thoroughly. Instead, she looked at Graham. I'll sign, but I need one final thing. Please go ahead. Any public event related to the scholarship or support, Lily won't have to speak. She doesn't owe anyone a thank you. Graham smiled for the first time during the meeting. She just needs to continue being herself. That's enough. That afternoon, as Rachel left the building, the winter sun cast slanted rays through the leafless trees. She took a deep breath, feeling as if she had just set down a backpack that had weighed her down for years. She stepped into the familiar bus stop, where it all began, where Lily had shared her last sandwich. And for the first time in the November chill, Rachel Morgan smiled. Not because everything was fine, but because she knew she had preserved the most important thing. No matter how life changes, a person's self-respect and value must remain intact. The first days of a new life. Rachel Morgan's first morning at Hopewell Medical Center didn't start with flowers or any welcome speeches. Instead, she began her shift promptly at 6:45 a.m., wearing a freshly pressed white lab coat, her hair neatly tied back, and a calm demeanor, though she still felt a tinge of nervousness inside. No one knew she had been personally recommended by Graham Bennett. That was her preference, and Graham respected it. In the records, she was simply Rachel Morgan, RN, with 7 years of experience at 2 community hospitals in Detroit. There was no mention of her meeting with Graham in the conference room on the 38th floor of the Bennett Tower. The first day wasn't easy. The hospital was bustling with patients, the computer system was different, and colleagues were cautious. She was called by the wrong name twice and nearly forgot to draw blood from a patient during peak hours. But when an elderly woman became irritable after waiting nearly 3 hours for a bed, it was Rachel who approached, held her hand, and asked, "Can I get you anything while you wait? Some warm tea? Or a hot towel?" The woman calmed down. Other nurses began to see Rachel differently. At Horizon Academy, Lily Morgan was embarking on her own new journey. Her navy blue uniform dress was slightly below her knees, the sleeves a bit too long, but her smile and bright eyes made those imperfections fade. She sat at a desk near the window in her first classroom, decorated with posters about the environment and social justice. Ms. Mary Beck, her teacher, had been informed about the new student, but knew nothing about the sandwich or the billionaire behind her enrollment. During recess, Lily didn't initiate conversations. She took out the lunch her mother had prepared, just an apple and a peanut butter sandwich. But when she saw a girl crying over a spilled milk carton, Lily quietly split her sandwich and offered half to the girl. "You don't have to do that," the girl said, eyes still red. "It's okay," Lily replied. "Sharing makes me feel warmer inside." The two girls smiled. That afternoon, Lily made her first friend at her new school. True to his word, Graham Bennett didn't impose his presence. Each week, he appeared only once, usually late Thursday afternoons, visiting the library where Lily studied. He brought no gifts, attracted no attention. He simply sat at a distance, sometimes reading alongside her or listening as Lily talked about the bird she was drawing in her biology notebook. Sparrows may look ordinary, but they remember flight paths spanning hundreds of miles, Lily said, eyes gleaming with excitement. "I think they might be smarter than adults." Graham chuckled. "You might be right." On another occasion, Rachel encountered him in the parking lot after a shift. The weather was cold, with light snow falling. "You didn't have to come all the way here," she said, holding a cup of hot coffee. "I know," he replied. "I just wanted to make sure Lily is doing well." Rachel looked at him for a moment, then nodded slightly. "She's doing well, and she's learning to trust another adult besides me." One weekend evening, as Rachel was checking Lily's homework, the girl suddenly asked, "Mom, can I invite Mr. Graham to dinner with us?" Rachel paused. "You want to invite him? Because he always listens, and he seems a bit sad. I think spaghetti might cheer him up." Rachel laughed, holding her daughter's hand. "Then we'll invite him." On Saturday evening, Graham arrived at the ground floor apartment wearing a gray sweater, carrying a loaf of French bread and a bottle of non-alcoholic red grape juice. The apartment wasn't luxurious, but it was tidy, filled with drawings and the aroma of sautéed garlic. Rachel let Lily lead the conversation about new friends, animal drawing projects, and the idea of making a sundial from a yogurt can. Graham remained mostly silent, occasionally nodding or smiling. After dinner, he offered to wash the dishes. Rachel was momentarily surprised, but handed him a pair of rubber gloves. "Not everyone appreciates dishwashing," she joked. "I spent a year in an orphanage after my father passed away," Graham replied. "That's where I learned to wash dishes." Rachel was taken aback. She hadn't known that detail about his past. In the following weeks, their lives continued to progress slowly. Rachel was temporarily assigned as the night shift supervisor after the head nurse fell ill. She accepted the role without complaint, but also declined dinner invitations from management. "I'm here to work, not to impress," she told her supervisor. At school, Lily was chosen as the class representative for a community project. She proposed fundraising for the free clinic where her mother worked, bringing Ms. Mary Beck to tears. Graham received weekly reports on the activities of the Lily Fund, but never discussed it with Lily herself. "She needs to know," Ellis said. "No, she needs to grow up without the burden of repaying anyone," Graham replied. Winter arrived. One day, Lily fell ill with a fever, and Rachel took time off to care for her at home. In the late afternoon, there was a knock at the door. Rachel opened it to find Graham standing there with a paper bag. "Chicken soup and storybooks," he said. "You didn't have to do this," Rachel said, but she didn't refuse. That evening, after Lily had fallen asleep, Rachel sat in an armchair, a blanket wrapped around her. "Do you know why I was afraid when you offered to help?" she asked. Graham looked at her, his eyes calm. "Because I used to think that anyone who gives so much must want something in return. And what do you think now?" Rachel looked up. "I think that sometimes there are people who carry wounds like mine, only they try to heal by giving." That night, after Graham left, Rachel opened her phone and wrote a few lines in her notes. "We don't need a miracle to change our lives. Sometimes, all it takes is someone who sees us not with pity, but with respect." Below that, she added, "Lily is growing up in the light. Not a dazzling light, but a warm, steady glow emanating from the quiet people around her. A new relationship Not family, but trust. On a late December afternoon, light snow gently blanketed the streets of Detroit. In the modest ground-floor apartment of the Morgan family, warm yellow light spilled from a small window, creating a cozy beacon amidst the gray winter sky. Inside, Lily sat cross-legged on the floor, immersed in her imaginative world, drawing paper, crayons, and unspoken dreams. Rachel was peeling potatoes for a traditional bean stew recipe passed down from her mother. After a day at Horizon Medical Center, the aroma of sautéed garlic filled the kitchen, easing the tension in her shoulders. The soft scratch of crayons on paper was steady, until Lily's voice broke the silence. "Mom, I'm done drawing." Rachel wiped her hands and walked over. On the paper was a shimmering glass castle amidst a snowy forest. But what caught Rachel's eye was the figure at the gate, a tall man in a long coat, holding an umbrella over a small girl in a yellow jacket. "Who's this?" Rachel asked, pointing to the figure. Without hesitation, Lily replied, "Mr. Graham." "Is Mr. Graham a knight?" Lily nodded, "Not the monster-fighting kind, but someone who listens and holds umbrellas for others. Like a real knight." Rachel smiled softly, brushing her daughter's hair. Though she remained cautious, it was clear that Lily had found something genuine in Graham. Not a replacement, but a steady, unobtrusive presence. For the past 3 weeks, Graham had joined them for dinner every Saturday, except when work took him away. These weren't lavish affairs, just simple stews or Lily's favorite grilled cheese sandwiches. Initially hesitant, Rachel noticed Graham always arrived in his dark coat and worn scarf, with a respectful demeanor. He never sat without invitation, avoided probing questions, and refrained from unexpected offers. Instead, he listened to Lily talk about her new friend Mateo, a boy who stuttered but excelled in math, or her science project growing beans. Graham asked timely questions, nodded appropriately, and occasionally shared anecdotes from his own childhood in Chicago, living on the 3rd floor of a leaky apartment building. Not all stories had happy endings, but their authenticity gradually lowered Rachel's defenses. One Thursday afternoon, after an early shift, Rachel decided to pick up Lily from Horizon Academy instead of letting her take the bus. The school appeared serene in the late sunlight, with leafless trees lining the sports field. As she waited, Lily's voice rang out. "Mom! Mom!" followed by "Mr. Graham is here too." Indeed, Graham stood beside Lily's teacher, Ms. Sarah Myers, a young woman with bright eyes and enthusiasm. In his hands was a large hardcover book. "Rachel," he greeted gently, "I happen to be discussing funding for the peer mentoring program. I saw Lily was about to be dismissed, so I waited." Rachel glanced at the teacher, who nodded in confirmation. "Mr. Bennett has sponsored part of our library. He also listens to Lily read aloud every Monday morning." "Read aloud?" Rachel raised an eyebrow at her daughter. Lily beamed. "I read storybooks to the younger kids." "Ms. Sarah says I read very clearly." Rachel was surprised. She hadn't heard about this activity before. Graham added quietly, "I don't interfere. I'm just there. She does it all on her own." That evening, Rachel retrieved an old photo album she had avoided since her husband, Adam, left without a word on Lily's birthday 3 years prior. With Lily asleep under the soft glow of a nightlight, Rachel flipped through pages. Ultrasound images, first birthday photos, Lily grinning amid a sea of balloons. But her gaze stopped at one particular picture, Adam holding Lily, his eyes distant. In contrast, Graham's recent interactions with Lily were warm and attentive. Rachel wasn't sure what Graham's intentions were. Perhaps he didn't know either. But she sensed he wasn't trying to fill a void, just seeking a piece of lost gentleness. That Sunday, Graham suggested taking Rachel and Lily to the downtown winter fair. Rachel hesitated, but Lily pleaded. "Please, Mom. There's ice skating too." "Mr. Graham said he won't skate, just hold warm scarves." And he did exactly that. Graham stood by the benches, wrapping a scarf around Lily, handing Rachel a cup of hot cocoa from a nearby vendor. The cold wind blew, but the atmosphere between them was warm. As Lily skated with friends, Graham softly said, "Rachel, I know we're not family, but I deeply value this connection. Perhaps because there's no obligation. The trust is more genuine. Rachel looked at him, the wind tousling her hair. I used to think you came out of guilt, out of sorrow, but now I believe you're here because you truly want to be. Graham nodded, his eyes on Lily, laughing joyfully on the crowded ice rink. I've lost many things beyond repair, but if a child's simple kindness can reach an adult, then I believe in second chances. Not to fix the past, but to live rightly. That night, Rachel wrote in her journal, a rare habit she maintained since college. Graham isn't trying to be Lily's father, but sometimes he looks at her as if her innocent kindness pulled him from the edge. And I'm beginning to believe we don't need blood ties to be each other's support, just sincerity and the willingness to stay. Winter hadn't ended, but in their ground floor apartment, the small window's light shone warmer than ever. And Lily, the 7-year-old with a heart full of love, continued drawing pictures of the man with the old scarf. In her drawings, he always stood beside her amidst snow-covered fields, not as a father, but as a stranger who stayed long enough to become familiar, crossing boundaries and restoring trust. The early spring sky over Detroit held a rare, gentle light. Not yet the gray of winter, not quite the brightness of summer. It slipped quietly through the windows, as if life itself was trying to relight a small flame of hope in people's hearts. Graham Bennett sat alone at a small cafe next to the hospital where his nonprofit medical foundation had just opened a satellite office. In front of him were 2 cups of coffee, one still steaming. Rachel arrived right on time. She wore her usual coordinator uniform, a slightly wrinkled white blouse, eyes ringed with fatigue, but full of quiet strength. She didn't look like someone working under him, but rather a partner, someone who had learned how to walk through pain without losing her compassion or integrity. Is there something special you wanted to discuss? Rachel asked softly as she sat down, a trace of caution in her eyes. Graham smiled, but didn't answer right away. He pulled a folder from his leather bag and slid it toward her. I'd like you to take a look at this. Rachel opened the folder, and after reading just a few lines, her brow furrowed. Early Detection Program for Rare Pediatric Diseases, a nationwide initiative, collaborating with community hospitals and mobile clinics to catch early signs of rare conditions often overlooked. You're the first person I want to lead this project. Rachel looked up. Program Director? Graham nodded. You have clinical experience, organizational skill, and most importantly, a heart that understands what it's like for families to live in the fog of uncertainty. Rachel stayed silent. The pages in front of her seemed to grow heavier. I know you're doing this in memory of Chloe, she said slowly, and I'm honored, but you also know what this means. Graham nodded gently. A few weeks every quarter away for site visits and conferences in other states. I know. Rachel clenched her hands slightly. I can't leave Lily alone. You won't have to, Graham said, as if he'd anticipated this. I have a proposal. A full scholarship program for education students. In exchange, they live with single-parent families and assist with childcare. You'll choose the person. You'll have full control. Rachel leaned back in her chair, thoughtful. She no longer doubted Graham's intentions. Not after months of him respecting every boundary she set. But the fear was still there, that she'd once again have to choose between her work and being a mother. I'll think about it, she said, eyes lingering on the folder. That night, as Rachel tucked Lily into bed, the little girl clutched her hand tightly. Can I ask you something, Mommy? Of course. If you have to go away, who will read me bedtime stories? Rachel swallowed hard. I won't go unless you say it's okay. Lily shook her head. It's not that. I just want to know if I can trust someone to read them in the right voice like you do. Rachel hugged her tighter. What if there is someone kind, gentle, who loves kids and knows how to do story voices just like Mommy? Would you be okay with them helping while I'm gone? Lily nodded softly. If they can make macaroni and draw pink dragons like I like, then yes. The following week, Rachel personally interviewed 5 candidates, all senior students in early childhood education or child psychology. Her questions weren't from a hiring manual. They came from a mother's heart. What would you do if she refuses to eat? How would you handle her saying, she misses me at night? Do you know the names of the 3 planets closest to Earth? In the end, she chose Jamie Tran, a soft-spoken young Asian woman, around 24, who had helped raise 4 younger siblings. Jamie didn't talk much about her resume, just told a story of drawing fairy tale scenes on the kitchen wall to soothe her little brother to sleep with colored pencils. Rachel smiled. She knew she'd made the right choice. When Graham heard the decision, he simply nodded and asked one question. Did Lily approve? Rachel answered. She said, Jamie doesn't tell stories quite like me, but she knows how to make strawberry snow cream and invented a game called the Hugmail Post Office to help her with missing me. 3 months later, Rachel took her first work trip to Austin, Texas, for a symposium on rare metabolic diseases. Just before boarding, she received a photo message from Jamie, Lily drawing a picture with a scribbled note underneath that read, Dear Mommy, today I ate all my carrot soup. I miss you 7 points. Love you 100 points. She sat quietly in the cabin, tears falling before she realized it. The screening program launched shortly after, its first mobile units operating in 3 cities. Rachel personally oversaw the protocols and trained the nursing teams. She stood in those temporary hospitals in her white coat, no longer just the single mom from the ground floor apartment, but the leader of a mission. And in her coat pocket, she still carried one of Lily's handmade cards. Sometimes, Graham would call, not to check on reports, but to ask, did Lily dream about anything last night? Or is Jamie surviving the schedule and storytime chaos? Rachel knew then. He was no longer trying to replace anyone. He was learning how to show up the right way in someone's life. Not to take over, but to walk alongside. One Saturday afternoon, after a long trip, Rachel came home to find Lily asleep on the sofa, clutching a gray stuffed animal with a stitched name tag, Sir Graham the Brave. She laughed through tears. Not a father, not a boss, but maybe a knight in the eyes of a little girl who once shared her only sandwich. And that was the beginning of a trust rebuilt, not through promises, but through quiet, steady acts of love. The sunny balcony and seeds of peace. The new apartment was on the 2nd floor of an old red brick building, right beside a small park near Horizon School. It wasn't a luxurious mansion or a high-end condo, but for Rachel Morgan and her 7-year-old daughter, Lily, it felt like a doorway to a completely new chapter, a chapter that didn't begin with struggle, but with sunlight. Moving day came on a quiet Sunday morning at the end of spring. The breeze was gentle, the sky clear, and the first rays of sunlight filtered through the trees, painting the cobbled path in front of the building in gold. Graham Bennett didn't show up, but he had quietly arranged all the paperwork behind the scenes, making sure this 3-bedroom apartment was a beginning, not a reward. Rachel had chosen the neighborhood herself, close to school, peaceful, with space for Lily, and modest enough to preserve the simplicity they both cherished. Which room do you like the most? Rachel asked, still wearing an old button-up shirt faintly scented with packing paper as she stood with her daughter in the empty apartment. Lily ran from room to room, her skirt twirling with each step before stopping at the one with a window that looked out over the balcony. This one gets morning sun, Mommy. And look, you can see the purple flowers in the yard. Rachel smiled. Then it's yours. The balcony was tiny, but just big enough for a wooden table, 2 wrought-tan chairs, and a few planters. Graham had sent over a gift basket with packets of basil, cherry tomato, and lavender seeds, along with a handwritten note. Hope this becomes your little corner of peace. GB. No grand gestures, no overstepping, just presence with respect and space. Rachel appreciated that more than any material gift. Their first days in the new home flowed gently, like a quiet stream. Lily threw herself into planting, reminded her mom to water the seedlings every morning, and gave each pot a name like new classmates. Mommy, I name a tomato plant Tommy. I think if he grows tomatoes, they'll be mischievous, Lily whispered, gently patting a tiny leaf. Rachel looked at her daughter bathed in early morning light, her light brown hair a mess but her eyes gleaming with joy, and something tugged at her heart. After all these years of scraping by, they had never lost their kindness. And now, In the simple dream of sunlit balcony and a tomato plant, Rachel finally felt it. They were truly living, not just surviving. Work at the Children's Health Foundation, founded by Graham, was picking up momentum. Rachel, now a regional program coordinator, no longer felt confined by the four walls of a clinic. She frequently traveled to oversee free screening programs in underserved areas, bringing with her both expertise and empathy. These trips no longer brought anxiety. Jessica, a child psychology student Rachel had carefully selected, lived with Lily during those times. The young woman was warm and excellent. Baker, and knew when to talk and when just to listen. Lily adored Miss Jess, calling her the second keyholder of the house. One Friday evening, after returning from medical seminar, Rachel sat on the balcony with Lily. The air was cool, city noise fading into a soft hush like a sigh at the end of a long day. "Do you smell that, Mommy?" Lily inhaled deeply. "That's Tommy's basil. And that one over there, that's the lavender. I haven't named it yet. Let's call her Lucy." Rachel laughed. Tommy and Lucy sounds like a perfect pair. She looked at her daughter's small hands cradling the flower pot, the soft glow from the living room wrapping them in a moment that felt like a fairy tale. "Are you happy, Lily?" Rachel asked, her voice trembling slightly. Lily nodded. "I have you. I have Jess. I have Mr. Graham, the balcony, Tommy, and Lucy. That's enough." Rachel turned her head away, hiding eyes that had begun to blur with tears. Her daughter's simple words made every sacrifice, every hesitation, every sleepless night feel worth it. A month later, Graham stopped by on a Sunday afternoon. He brought a picture book about balcony gardens for children and a small bicycle with a bell that jingled sweetly. He claimed he'd found it in a vintage shop. Rachel was a bit hesitant at first, but seeing Lily's face light up, she gave a small nod. They all sat together on the balcony, sipping tea as Lily proudly introduced every plant and little trinket. "She's a natural caregiver," Graham said, gently stroking a lavender leaf. "Some people are born to heal, not with medicine, but just by being there." Rachel didn't speak. She didn't have to. The warmth in her eyes said it all. Graham didn't bring up the past, nor did he talk about the future. He simply sat there, not as a father figure or a benefactor, but as a man who had once lost something, and now found a piece of himself again in the sunlight and herb-scented air of an old apartment filled with quiet love. And in that moment, Rachel realized, life doesn't have to be perfect to be complete. Sometimes, all it needs is enough peace to plant a seed of hope. And sometimes, just a sunlit balcony is enough. The grand opening, sunlight, sandwiches, and seeds of hope. The morning of the opening ceremony arrived with a gentle spring breeze, soft sunlight settling across the glass dome of the new building like a silent blessing from the sky. Outside the Chloe and Lily Center for Rare Disease Diagnostics, a quiet line of people had already formed, each carrying hope, whether in their hearts or reflected in eyes longing for a miracle for their sick children. The three-story building, wrapped in glass, mirrored the young saplings newly planted around the courtyard. At the center, a symbol, two intertwined daisies, one white, one purple, was proudly displayed on the sign. Chloe, a permanent memory of Graham, and Lily, a seed of kindness that had taken root in the most barren soil. Rachel stood backstage, hands clasped tightly. The light blue dress Graham had chosen for her struck the perfect balance, dignified, yet warm. Her eyes followed Lily, now being gently guided by staff on how to hold the ribbon-cutting scissors. The girl wore cream-colored flats and a butterfly-shaped hair clip. Her Lily, 7 years old the day their lives changed, was now 11, taller, more poised, yet still held the same pure heart that once gave away a sandwich without hesitation. Graham stood at a distance, next to the mayor and state health officials. He wore a light gray suit and a purple tie, Chloe's favorite color. His face betrayed layers of emotion beneath its composed surface. His eyes found Rachel's in the crowd, and in that quiet connection, nothing needed to be said. One look was enough to recall everything they had journeyed through. When the ceremony began, the program coordinator called Rachel forward. The speaker's voice rang clearly through the microphone. Please welcome MS. Rachel Morgan, the inaugural executive director of the Chloe and Lily Center, whose heart and vision helped turn a dream into reality. Applause rippled through the crowd like a wave. Rachel stepped onto the stage, her heart pounding as if it were her first night on call in the ER years ago. But this time, she wasn't alone. Behind her stood a team of doctors, nurses, technicians, and therapists, people who had come together to build a place where rare diseases could be detected early, where children once thought hopeless might be saved. "I've never been someone with big dreams," Rachel began, her voice slightly trembling but full of sincerity. "I'm a nurse, a single mom. I used to think having enough to cover rent and dinner meant I had everything I needed. But one day, my daughter, Lily, gave her only sandwich to a stranger at a bus stop. That small act, as you can see, led to all of this." She paused, blinking back the tears welling in her eyes. "What I've learned from my daughter and from Mr. Graham Bennett is that kindness, no matter how small, can cause great ripples. Those ripples reach children in need of early diagnosis. They reach parents who are afraid because they don't know what's happening to their child. And today, together, we're making those ripples real." After Rachel's speech, the stage was cleared for Lily's short presentation. She stepped up, adjusted the microphone to her height, and took a deep breath. "My name is Lily. When I was 7, I gave my sandwich to a stranger. My mom said if you can share when you don't have much, that's real kindness. I didn't know who the man was, only that he looked cold and sad. But now I know his name is Mr. Graham, and I think he's a good man with a sad heart, like someone who lost someone they didn't get to say goodbye to." In the audience, Graham couldn't stop the tears from falling. Not because of grief, but because of what continued on. He looked at the girl standing there. Not a replacement, but a continuation of Chloe, of the belief that love doesn't disappear. It simply changes form. Lily went on, "I hope this place helps all kids get checkups on time, and all parents don't have to be scared about what's going on. And if you see someone who looks sad, you should share your sandwich, or candy, or just a smile. I think the world needs more of that." The applause thundered. Rachel quickly wiped her tears as Graham stepped onto the stage and wrapped Lily in an embrace. The same kind he used to give Chloe. Gentle, reverent. No one saw a billionaire that day. They saw a father. The ribbon cutting followed. The purple and white ribbon was snipped cleanly by Lily's small scissors. The glass doors opened, welcoming in the morning light, and with it, new dreams. Inside, the diagnostic area was decorated with artwork from children who had already been helped. One piece drawn by Lily, placed beside a photo of Chloe. Below it, a line written in crayon. 2 hearts, 1 wave. That afternoon, Rachel, Lily, and Graham sat together in the small garden behind the center, on a bench engraved with the names of the 2 girls. Graham held the photo of Chloe he always carried. "She'd be proud of you today," Rachel said softly. "I think Chloe would be smiling," Graham replied, eyes tender as he watched Lily watering the flowers. "And you should be proud of yourself, too," Rachel added. "You chose love over shutting down." The sky turned amber. Inside the center, the first children were already being seen. None of them knew that, because of a single sandwich, they now had hope. Rachel gently squeezed Graham's hand. No more words were needed. In that moment, everything was there: love, trust, and a life where pain had not been wasted. Closing a chapter and letting in the light. Late in the afternoon, gentle spring sunlight bathed the small garden behind the Chloe and Lily Center. A soft breeze rustled through the lavender rose, their purple petals fluttering as if waving goodbye to something that had passed. On a weathered oak bench, 3 people sat side by side, not saying much. They didn't need to. Their presence was the most tender language of all. Lily, now 12, was no longer the wide-eyed little girl from years ago. She still carried the same gentle spirit, but now it was tinged with the quiet confidence of someone who had lived through great change. In her hands was a new sketchbook, its cover painted with stars and an open sky. She was sketching a flower she had recently planted by the fence, occasionally glancing up at her mother and Mr. Graham. "I still remember that day," Lily said softly, her voice as light as leaves brushing together. That morning, I saw you sitting on the bench with a torn coat and really sad eyes. I didn't think too much, just that you looked hungry. Graham smiled faintly, something deep and unspoken shimmering in his gray eyes. And you were the first person in 3 weeks who looked at me like I was real. Rachel gently squeezed her daughter's hand. That same hand once trembled as she clutched Lily with nothing but exhaustion and unpaid bills to hold on to. Now it was steady, warm, marked by a journey that had moved from despair to hope, from surviving to truly living. I remember you ate really slowly, Lily continued, like it was treasure or something. I always wondered why you didn't just eat it right away. Because I'd forgotten what kindness tasted like, Graham replied, voice low. And that sandwich, it wasn't about the bread. It was about the person who gave it. Silence followed, a silence not awkward, but full of the things they didn't need to say aloud. It all began with the smallest thing, Rachel whispered. But when kindness comes from a pure heart, it can change everything. They sat like that for a long time, until the sun began to lower behind the treetops. The final rays caught Lily's hair, turning it gold. Graham looked at the girl, now a young woman, and in her smile he saw Chloe. But he also knew Lily was not Chloe. And that was, okay, do you want to know what made me come back that day? Graham asked suddenly. Lily looked at him, her eyes wide and bright. I never asked, she said quietly. I thought maybe you were too sad. Graham nodded. I was. But what brought me back was that you didn't turn away. Rachel reached up and smoothed her daughter's hair. She remembered that night. The cold tomato soup, the unexpected knock at the door, and the look in the eyes of a man carrying more than he let on. If she had closed the door, if she hadn't listened, would everything have turned out differently? I didn't think what I did was a big deal, Lily added. It's just, Mom taught me, if you can share, then you should. Graham smiled, and sometimes a small act of sharing becomes the seed of an entire garden. A breeze passed through, carrying the scent of lavender and the sound of children laughing in the distance. Nearby, families waited for hope, in the form of early diagnoses, timely treatment, and a future once thought out of reach. Chloe's legacy lived on, not in a name, but in the second chances no one believed they deserved. Lily stood up, walked over to a nearby bush, and picked a small bunch of yellow wildflowers. For you, she said, handing them to Graham. I think Chloe would have liked wildflowers. He took them gently and placed them over his heart like a treasure. Chloe would be grateful to you, he whispered. The sky had darkened. Rachel checked her watch, then looked at the 2 people she loved most. Let's head in. It's an early morning tomorrow. On the walk back, Lily walked in the middle, holding both her mother's and Graham's hands. She didn't know it, but to the adults, that simple gesture was magic. A family, not by definition but by choice. A love not confined by roles, but shaped by kindness. A story that started with a sandwich, now stretching across hundreds, even thousands of lives. That night, Lily wrote in her journal, Today I saw Mr. Graham cry when I talked about the sandwich. But he didn't cry because he was sad. I think he cried because he found something he lost, a belief that the world really can be good. Rachel read the entry before going to bed. She turned off the main light, switched on a lamp, and picked up her phone to send Graham a message. Thank you for not giving up. Not just on us, but on yourself. A minute later, a reply came. It wasn't me who saved you. It was both of you who saved me, and gave me a reason to be better every day. Rachel turned off the light. The day ended without fanfare, without a grand event. Yet in her heart, it was monumental, because she knew, from this point forward, they were no longer 3 separate people. There was something more. A family built not by blood, but by kindness, sincerity, and brave choices. An ending, but also a beginning, of another life, of a world where a simple sandwich, given with small hands and a big heart, could still change fate. In a world increasingly driven by speed, busyness, and the pursuit of material gain, the story of Lily Morgan, a 7-year-old girl who shared her only sandwich with a stranger, reminds us that the most precious thing isn't what we give, but how we see others, with respect and compassion. Graham Bennett, A billionaire who once lost his family in his chase for success wasn't just moved by that simple act of kindness. He changed his entire life to live for something greater: connection, empathy, and purpose. We live in a society where kindness is sometimes mistaken for weakness, and skepticism often overshadows trust. But the story of Lily, Rachel, and Graham proves that even the smallest act of goodness, when given unconditionally, can spark waves of profound change. Sometimes, something as simple as sharing a meal can become the catalyst for healing, for restoring lost faith in others, and for opening a future the giver never imagined. In today's world, all of us have passed by a stranger at the bus stop. They may not be homeless. They might be a quiet coworker, a lonely elder, or a child with a sad look in the schoolyard. Kindness doesn't demand grand gestures. It begins with not looking away, with a warm glance, a caring question, a timely hug, or simply offering what we have. And the deeper lesson: true help doesn't come from pity, but from respect. Graham didn't just give, he listened, he walked alongside, and he learned how not to overstep. That's what made the journey of these three people not a fantasy, but a real, human outcome. Born from intentional choices, the courage to face loss, and the strength to begin again with a more open heart. If there's anything the world needs more of, it's kindness, quiet, unconditional, and able to see the person behind the situation. Because sometimes a small sandwich, offered in the right way, can save a soul. And who knows, one day we might be that stranger, saved by a simple act of kindness we never saw coming. Thank you so much for being here. Your support means everything, and I can't wait to bring you more heartfelt stories soon. Until next time, stay kind, stay inspired, and I'll see you in the next one.